What's up, everyone? We are off to play another poker session. We're in the dark this time. We are about to play a bigger than normal session. We're headed to the ATM. We're gonna need some more cash for this one. This would be a great spot to run good. We're playing in the big game again. This is 2-5 or even bigger. Everybody says it plays like a 5-10. As someone who hasn't played a 5-10, I don't really know if that's true or not. We're getting in the mix. We're gonna win some money. Hit that like button. Comment down below whether you think it's gonna be a winning session or a losing session, or if you think me moving up to somewhere where people will respect my race is a good idea or a bad idea. Everybody says you need to be playing at least 2-5 if you want to be playing professionally, so here we freaking go. Time to get in the mix. Subscribe if you're new. Let's get it. First hand of the night, we look down at King, Queen of Clubs from the cutoff, starting the hand off at 500 bucks. We see a very active player in middle position, make it $10. We're not afraid. We're in this bigger game. We're getting after it. We raised it up to 35 bucks here. This is a 3-bet. He doesn't think about it for very long before making the call, but we're not too worried about that. We've got a great hand to play heads up here, and we're only 8-handed, so that makes the hand even a little bit better. Flop is not the best flop for us, though. The flop comes down 6 high with only 1 club. So we're not really happy with any of our options, but when he checks, we can check it back here. I think that's fine. Turn comes down, another pretty much blank card. Action checks through again, so we're not sad at all to see him playing this very passively. The river comes down the ace of spades. Our opponent checks. I think this is a great spot for us to make a bet here. We're gonna bet out 20 bucks. With a perfect card for us. As you can see, he makes the snap fold. So we're taking down the first hand. We put in a 3-bet. We're feeling good about how the thing is starting. Playing in the higher stakes game, we're in good shape. Hand number 2, we're looking down at King 2 of spades from the button. We've got about 525 bucks. The game is now 9-handed. We see the opponent from the previous hand open up to $15. I think I'm gonna actually go ahead and see a flop with this suited king hand. It's not a great hand, obviously, but the solver likes these a decent amount. I call, and we see a relatively tight player make the call in the big blind also, so we're off to see a flop, which is a great one for us. Flop comes down ace high with 2 spades, so now we've got the nut flush draw, so we're obviously in fantastic position. We see the initial raiser bet $25, I make the call, and the other player in the hand makes the fold. So we're off to see a turn, which is a pretty good card for us. It's the King of Clubs, so now we've got a very good second pair. He checks, I'm gonna go ahead and check this one back, and we are off to see a river. River is a great one. It's the 2 of diamonds. Our opponent checks to us. We have to decide how much we're gonna bet here. We decide we're gonna go with a large size. We bet $85, and as soon as he sees we're gonna bet, he makes the snap fold again. So we're taking down another one. Almost feels like we're picking on this player at this point, but everything has been fairly standard, so off to a very good start. Looking down at pocket 10s in this one, we're under the gun too. We've got about 570 bucks, and our same opponent from the first 2 hands opens up to 10 once again. Obviously, he's playing a pretty loose range. I raise it up to $35. Action folds back to him, and he thinks about it for a second before saying, I'll give you action, and making the call. Flop comes down king high. We're in a continuation bet $20 here. I think that's pretty standard. He makes the call, and we're off to see a turn, which comes down an ace. We both check this very obnoxious turn. River's a 7, both check, and he shows king 5 offsuit for outflopping us pretty hard. This guy's clearly getting a little bit out of line here. We're gonna see if we can catch him in a good spot. He's playing a super wide range. I'm okay with having this guy to my right. Hand number 4, we're looking down at pocket jacks. We've got the jiggities. We're under the gun, and I've got about 520 bucks in front of me. I opened a $15 in a non-straddle pot, and it folds to a very active player on the button, who makes the raise to $45. We see the extremely active player that we've been playing all these previous hands with call in the small blind. Time for me to raise it up here. I think against these 2 guys, this is a definite spot. We want to put in more chips. I'm gonna raise it up. We just have to figure out a size. I decided to go with $140 here. I think that's pretty okay. I think I could actually go a little bit bigger. The initial raiser goes into the tank for a little bit and eventually makes the call. Then we see the super active player who puts in the fold. So we are off to see a flop in a very big pot. Obviously, this is a very bloated pot. Flop comes down queen, queen 4. So pretty interesting situation. I bet out $100, and we see our opponent go well into the tank. I don't think he's gonna have very many queens here. I think he's gonna have hands like ace king a lot, which could make the call here for $100. I think it will usually fold. We're kind of hoping for a call on this board. The only hand we're really afraid of is ace queen or pocket queens, and if you've got quads, here's my chips. He goes well into the tank for making the fold. We take down a nice size pot. Things are really going our way here in the early portion of this session. Stacking chips, making big bets here in the big game. We're feeling really good about ourselves. Looking down at a red king queen from the cutoff, we're starting this hand off about 690 bucks. We see the player that we played the big hand with last time open up to $15. We see the super active player that's in there every single time make the call. I'm raising it up. I make it 50 bucks here. I think this is a pretty standard 3-bet spot, especially when we see an open and a call. I don't think $50 is the right size. Maybe it's okay. But we see the initial raiser bump it up to $160. I don't think we have too much of a decision here. I think this is a pretty standard fold. Could he be getting out of line here? 100%. I don't even know if this is exactly how he would play aces or something like that. Maybe he would. Regardless, though, we're out of here. I don't think there's really anything to do. This is definitely a 3-bet and fold type hand. Looking down at ace-jack offsuit from middle position, I open to $15. We see the hijack call and the big blind also make the call. So we're going 3 ways to the flop. Not exactly what I had in mind. This is not a very strong hand in general, but we're off to see a flop nevertheless, which comes down king high with 2 clubs. I'm going to bet out $15 when it checks to me. We see a call from the hijack and a fold from the big blind. So we're off to see a turn, hoping that it'll be a club or an ace. That is not what we get. We get the 9 of hearts. So this bad hand has led us to a bad place. I'm going to keep on betting. I bet $20. And unfortunately, we see a call from the hijack. He doesn't think about it for very long before making the call. River comes down, not a good one for us. It's a 6 of diamonds, and we see our opponent bet $60 after we check. I think this is a pretty standard give up spot. I'm not going to really try and continue or make some sort of hero call here. Could my ace high be good? I think it could be. But against this guy in this spot, we're just going to make the fold. Hate how he played this hand. I honestly think ace-jack offsuit from middle position in this game, in this spot, could maybe just be a fold pre-flop. Okay guys, this is one of the biggest hands of the night. We've got almost $600 in front of us. We see an early position player open to 20. There are like 5 players to make the call before we look down at pocket kings. We are going to raise it up here. We got to go a huge size with this many players in here. I don't really know what exact size we should go. This is kind of a weird spot. We're going to bet out $200. Action pretty quickly folds to one of the players who called the $20 raise. He doesn't know it's his turn and he thinks about it for quite a while. When someone finally tells him that it's his turn, he says, oh, it's Kenny, and snap makes the call. Then we see the crazy player who's been playing every single hand make the call also. So we are off to see a flop. Obviously not a terrible flop for us. Action ends up checking to me fairly quickly. I'm going to shove all in on this flop. And pretty quickly, without too much hesitation, we see the initial caller make the call. Then we see the crazy player go way into the tank. At this point, we're praying for a call from the crazy player. We have no idea at all what the initial caller could have. This is a wild hand. There's a ton of money in the middle. The super active opponent is still well into the tank, and he tanks it out for a while before eventually folding. We show our pocket kings. We asked to run it twice and get snap told no. So I'm not really sure what the deal is with that. Off to see a turn and a river, just one turn and one river. And we were praying for a clean card, but that's not what we get. He hits 2 pair on the turn with his 8-6 of clubs. What is going on here? How is he making this call? Is this what the high stakes games are going to be like? This is a pretty devastating loss. That is a massive pot of over $1,000 out there. We're pretty tilted. What are we going to do? Time to rebuy. Obviously, this game is a great game. We buy in for $500 more, so we've got around $700 in front of us from our $1,000 that we bought in for total. Devastating to not win this hand, obviously, but the game's great. We're going to stick with it. We're going to win that money back and then some. Why couldn't kings just have held one time? Looking down at pocket eights from under the gun too, we're hoping we can flop a set here and get some money back after that nightmare of pocket kings. We end up calling the $10 straddle and going 4 ways to a flop, which comes down ace high with no eights. So when the small blind bets 25, I'm out of there. No set, no bet. Looking down at pocket aces. We've got 2 red aces here in the hijack. We've got about 700 bucks. We see an older player from very early position open to $40 before a very short stacked player with only $100 left shoves all in for that $100. Once the action folds to me, I've got a pretty interesting decision here. Should I just call and try and let the initial raiser in, or hope that he would raise or something like that? I'm not really sure. It's kind of an unfortunate situation. Both the crazy players are out of the hand already, so we're not going to get anything in against them here with pocket aces. We decide to raise it up to $225, which I think is probably a mistake since the crazy players are out. If they were still in, I think I definitely would need to raise it up, and I would need to raise it to some very large increment. We see a player who's definitely on tilt after dusting off at least $1,000 go well into the tank before eventually making the fold, which with what I assume was a pretty bad hand. And then we see the initial raiser, an older player, go well into the tank. He's really thinking about it. He must have something pretty good. I'm hoping he could have kings or ace king or queens or jacks or something he's willing to play for stacks with. He doesn't have that deep of a stack. I want to say he's got around 400 or 500, so enough that we would be extremely excited to get it in against him. Unfortunately, he eventually puts in the fold and shows pocket jacks. So hell of a fold by him. That really sucks for us, but we've got a decent pot out there in the middle and we've got aces. So we're going to go ahead and show our hand. We're not really the type that is going to hide our cards for the whole run out unless it's somebody we really dislike or has been tilting us for some reason. So we show our aces. Our opponent does not show. We're off to a flop, which comes down 10 high. Nothing to really be scared about there. Turn comes down, a great one. It's the ace of spades, so we've got the nuts. River comes down the 3 of spades, so now we've got a very good full house. The only thing we lose to is pocket 3s, and he eventually mucks. He does not have pocket 3s, so we go ahead and take this one down. Nice size pot. Wish it could have been bigger. Wish we could have tangled with one of the super deep stacks here, especially turning a set. Anyway, nice to win some back. Let's build this thing up. Okay, a slight downgrade from pocket aces. We are looking down at pocket 10s this time. We're under the gun. We got about 850 bucks to start the hand. The button had straddled to 10 bucks. The small blind called. Time for us to put in a raise, guys. We raised up to $40 here, and the button is the only caller. So we're off to see a flop, which comes down. Pretty good one for us. It's 3-3 deuce. So no set for us, but also all undercards. So I'm going to continue betting. I put out 50 bucks, and we see our opponent make the call. So we're off to the turn, which comes down the king of spades. I'm going to bet out here a little bit on the large side, I think. Our hand could use some protection. We bet $85. And he thinks about it for not very long before making the fold. So we take this one down. Feels pretty good. I know this guy's a high stakes player, so playing hands against him and winning them feels pretty good. Taking down a nice pot feels pretty good also. I did miss table footage on one hand in this session. I've got Jack 9 offsuit from the button, starting the hand with about 950 bucks. I wasn't super excited to video this hand as I didn't really think anything exciting was going to happen, but things get a little bit interesting. As we see an active player who we know plays higher stakes, raise it up to $10. There are 4 callers, and from the button, I'm going to make the call also. So we're off to see a flop, which isn't exactly what we had in mind. We do flop middle pair. Action ends up checking around as it will so often do in these very multi-way pots. As I said, this thing's 5-handed right now. Turn comes down the 7 of clubs, and we see the insanely active player that we played all his hands with earlier bet out $25. He is on a crazy heater, so we're going to go ahead and make the call here, not because he's on a heater, but because we know he plays at an insanely wide range, and there's a flush draw on this flop. I'm the only caller, so we're off to see the river, which comes down the ace of spades, and he bets out $75. This feels like kind of a big sizing for him to use, not the sizing I think he's going to use if he wants me to call. Also, this guy is kind of off the rails. Like, I don't know what he could possibly show up with in this hand, but I also think this could be a bluff. It feels like a weird situation. It feels like a spot where a lot of the draws bricked, especially the most obvious one. I think about it a little bit, and I think that my jack is good enough to call. I'm going to use this as a bluff catcher here. We're going to put in a call. As soon as we put the chips in, he says, well, if you can call, you must be good. That's kind of a weird deal. I don't know if I'm good or not. I flip over my hand, and he says, oh, nice call, and slides his cards into the muck. So we take this one down. Apparently made a fairly decent hero call on the river. Nice to win a nice little chunk. I think we're about even now. Time to build up some profits. Looking down at 2-3 of spades from the small blind, starting the hand off with about 1,050 bucks. One of the wild players opens to $15, and there are 2 calls to me. I decided we're gonna call also. We're going 4 ways to the flop, hoping we can hit something good, and we do. We are flopping a flush here. We're in a great spot. Unfortunately, we're the first ones to act, so we're gonna go ahead and check, assuming that somebody's gonna put in a bet here with some sort of spade, probably the ace or the king of spades. Unfortunately, the action checks through, and we get a terrible card on the turn. The turn is the king of spades. So we're obviously not gonna bet here. We end up checking, and we see the action check through again. So pretty happy to see that action check through on the turn here. Maybe our flush is still good, but obviously we're not going to be able to go for value in this spot. River comes down the 2 of diamonds. Glad it wasn't another spade. Otherwise we'd be counterfeit. I check. We see one opponent check, the next one check, and the final one checks. So if nobody bets, maybe we've got a chance to win this. I flip my hand over. Somebody's got a straight, but we're good. Somebody says they have a straight. I'm not even worried about that. We know we're good here. Flip our cards over, take this one down. Looking down at some pretty wheel cards in the next one, we've got ace-3 of spades. We're on the button. We've got around $1,100. One of the looser players in middle position opens to $15. I see a call from the hijack, and I decide to make the call instead of raising. I think this is pretty bad with this hand. I should be 3-betting or folding. Flop comes down, not the greatest one for us. There's only 1 spade on it. Action ends up checking through before we see a very pretty turn, which is the queen of spades. So now we have the nut flush draw. Obviously, that's a great card for us, and when the initial raiser bets 30, I think I could raise here a lot of the time. I think I probably should raise here, but unfortunately, I don't. I just make the call. We see the other player get out of the way, so we're going heads up to the river, which comes down the king of diamonds. So we break out our flush draw, but we get some interesting news when the initial raiser puts in the check. So I decide we're going to try and steal this thing on the river. We're going to bet out here. We pick a sizing of $45. I really don't like any of this very much at all, especially when we get quickly called by a queen. I can't remember what his other cards were, but he wasn't afraid. He was making the call with the queen here, and he was right. Hate how I played this hand. Please roast me in the comments. I think I could have made different decisions on pretty much every street. Yikes. In the next one, we're looking down at a very pretty ace-jack of diamonds from middle position. We've got about $1,000 in front of us. We open up the action to $15 in a non-straddle pot, and we get some unfortunate news when a player in later position 3-bets us to $105. Obviously, that's a very large sizing. Obviously, we're going to get out of the way with our hand here. And it was a great fold because he shows pocket aces. Everybody folds pre-flop. He takes down the minimum almost. Yeah, we dodged aces there. Thank God. Upgrading from ace-jack to ace-king here, we've got about $950 and we're on the button. I'm gonna make it $20 to go pre-flop, and we see the small blind and the big blind make the call. So we are off to see a flop against a player who's on tilt and stuck a whole bunch, and the old guy who folded pocket jacks to us earlier. Flop comes down, a pretty terrible one for our hand. I check after they check to me, and obviously we see the action check through. Turn comes down, the 5 of clubs, and we see the big blind bet out $55 here. I think I've slightly under-repped my hand by checking the flop, although that's a pretty terrible flop for us. I guess it's a paired board, maybe it's not the worst. But anyway, I think about it for a little bit before eventually putting in the call. I think this guy is on tilt. I think if I hit the river, I can get paid, and I think there are some good cards that I can bluff on the river, like a jack or a queen. So anyway, I make the call, and the river comes down, the 10 of spades. So hate that quite a bit. Obviously not what we were looking for. We see the small blind bet out $90, and I'm going to fold. I'm not messing with this anymore. I feel like we torched some money off here. Please let me know in the comments what you think about this call on the turn. How should I have played ace-king in this hand? All feedback will be greatly appreciated because I suck at playing ace-king. Following up that ace-king hand, we're looking down at ace-queen. We've got about $925. We're in middle position. We're going to open it to $15, and we see a relatively loose player to our left make the call, and the high-stakes player across the table from us in the big blind make the call. So we are off to see a flop, hoping for some very particular cards, and we don't get them exactly, but we do get a very good flop of 8-6-3 with all diamonds. Obviously holding the ace of diamonds, we're going to go ahead and bet out here. After we see the big blind check, I bet $15, and we see a fold from the player to our left, and we see another fold from the high stakes player across the table from us. So we would have liked to play a pot with this hand in this position, but oh well, taking it down, not going to complain about a winner. This one's a big one, guys. We're looking down at ace king of spades from the big blind. We've got about 950 bucks to start the hand. There's a button straddle to $10. We opened to 35, which was clearly not enough, as we get not one, not two, not three, but 4 callers. So going very multi-way to this flop, which thank God comes down king high with 1 spade. So good flop for us. Obviously, we've got a big pot here. I bet $80, which I think is not a big enough amount, but it's multi-way, so I'm not really sure what amount I should have bet. Let me know down in the comments. That would be great. I bet $80 here, and we get 2 callers, a tilted player under the gun and a player who I know plays high stakes and likes to gamble in the cutoff. Turn comes down the queen of diamonds. I check, since this is one of the worst cards in the deck for us, obviously, and under the gun one bets $150, leaving himself about 120 behind. The cutoff folds, and obviously I'm not going anywhere here. I decide we're just going to make the call. We're not going to raise it up. I think raising would be pretty suicidal here after the board pairs like that, and we've drastically under-repped our hand. River comes down the 2 of spades. I check, and our opponent goes way into the tank. He's thinking about it a lot. He only has $120 left, so I've pretty much already decided that if he does put it in, we're going to call, which kind of makes my next decision a little bit weird, because when he eventually checks, I'm not really sure what we can get value from here aside from other kings, which seems a little bit thin. I decide in the end, we're going to check it back. I've got ace king here. I think we're going to take it to showdown, and he mucks his hand, saying that's exactly what he put us on. Well, good job if that's what you put us on. We're going to go ahead and take this one down. If that's what you put us on, I don't know why you're betting into us. We're not going to be folding. Not for the amounts that he was going to be able to wager. So we take down the second biggest pot that we play of the night. Not as big as the massive pot we lost with pocket kings, but big enough to put us well into the black. So let's see if we can make this a big winning session. At this point in the night, the game is down to 8-handed. I've got about $1,375 in front of me. I've got pocket fours. I'm under the gun 1. I opened at $15, which seems a little loose in this game, honestly, to be opening the small pocket pair, but I didn't want to limp it. We get calls from the small blind and the big blind, so kind of unsurprising, but these are some good players we're in here against, and they are very, very deep. Flop comes down Jack, Jack 6. Not the worst flop for my hand. Doesn't include a 4, obviously. Once the action checks to me, I'm going to bet out $20, and we see 1 fold, and then we see another fold. So we go ahead and take this one down. Feels good. Win a little pot. Chipping up a little bit. Unfortunately, the game's getting a little bit worse, so we are going to look at racking up and heading out. Well, guys, that's all for this one. Clearly, we were not playing in a 1-2 game. That's more like a 2-5, a really big 2-5, or a 5-10 game. Things got very big, very deep. Really wish that pocket king's hand would have worked out a little bit better for us, but we'll take the win. We're in for $1,000. We are out for $1,380, $380 profit. We'll take that all day. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, please give the video a thumbs up. If you made it this far into the video, I'm sure you've already hit the like button, so I appreciate you. Comment down below whether you think it's a good idea for me to play in this game or not. I think I played pretty well. I didn't feel too uncomfortable. Once I'm seeing people with like $4,000 or $5,000 stacks, it's starting to feel a little sketch. Like, do I really have the money to play against these guys? But everybody's dollars are worth the same, so I don't know. Let me know what you think. See you on Tuesday with another video. Kenny's out.